Some instructional strategies for visual impairments and twice exceptional students are to use chalkboard and overhead projectors. You want to say everything out loud that is being written or presented on the chalkboard or overhead. For example, all right, class, today is Tuesday the 1st, 2013. I've written your morning challenge on the board. Today, you will write the first 5 spelling words in alphabetical order. Are there any questions on what you need to do this morning? You also want to encourage students to move closer to the board if needed, and always ask for clarification if something is missed from the board. Students who are twice exceptional are students with disabilities who also are gifted and talented. We can help these students in these 3 areas. First, use dynamic assessment to judge student work, often providing extended periods so that they can complete projects. Secondly, identify big ideas that you would like students to learn so you can prioritize activities. Relate new learning to knowledge and skills that students already possess. Arrange the classrooms so there are quiet areas, areas for discussion, and areas with comfortable furniture. Lastly, create a classroom climate that is respectful and welcoming of all students. Provide the assistance students need in order to succeed. Advocate for students and encourage them to self-advocate. Instructional interventions for intellectual disabilities and learning disabilities. These strategies, like planning for a generalization and making abstract concepts more concrete, are what these students need in order to learn. 2 examples are task analysis and peer tutoring. Now, task analysis, you want to break down any activity or task into small steps and then teach those steps to the students. With peer tutoring, students are partnered, provided with instructional materials that they are to learn, and expected to help each other in accomplishing the learning goal. Now, with learning disabilities, data shows that direct instruction and strategy instruction used together are highly effective for most students. Clear demonstrations of new information in small segments, practice that the teacher guides, and immediate feedback to students in their work is what direct instruction is. Here's an example. You want to provide lessons in a well-organized, sequenced manner. Begin lessons with a short review of previously learned skills necessary to begin the lesson. And begin lessons with a short statement of goals. Provide clear, concise explanations and illustrations of what is to be learned. Present new material in small steps with practice and demonstrations at each step. Provide initial guidance through practice activities. Provide students with frequent opportunities to practice and generalize skills. Ask questions to check students' understanding and obtain responses from everyone. Now, with strategy instructions, these are methods of teaching students techniques, principles, or rules applicable in many learning situations that guide them to complete tasks independently. Here is a visual strategy of how to teach children in kindergarten how to write.
There are many different instructional interventions that can be implemented into a classroom to ensure success for those students who are considered gifted or talented. Acceleration is a way to serve these types of students in many different ways and is low cost. Students might skip a grade or teachers might implement curriculum flexibility within the content area. Enrichment extends regular curriculum and helps the students develop more complex ideas. Finally, a teacher might differentiate instruction. Many times, students with health and physical disabilities are just uncomfortable. A teacher might give the student a different chair to make them feel more comfortable. Some students might need the use of orthosis or braces or other devices used to stabilize legs and support the weight of an individual. When it comes to communicating, a teacher might use different types of technology to help students communicate. Many different companies are trying to develop their own technology to make sure all students are able to learn. Along with the use of technology, teachers should give students ample time to respond because sometimes students just need a little bit more time. An aid to help students with physical and health disabilities is as simple as giving them extra time to do makeup work. The causes and degrees of hearing loss vary across the deaf and hard of hearing community, as do methods of communication and attitudes towards deafness. In general, there are 3 types of hearing impairment. 1. Conductive loss affects the sound conducting paths of the outer and middle ear. The degree of loss can be decreased through the use of a hearing aid or by surgery. People with conductive loss might speak softly, hear better in noisy surroundings than people with normal hearing, and experience ringing in their ears. 2. Sensorineural loss affects the inner ear and the auditory nerve and can range from mild to profound. People with sensorineural loss might speak loudly, experience greater high-frequency loss, have difficulty distinguishing consonant sounds, and not hear well in noisy environments. 3. Mixed loss results from both a conductive and sensorineural loss. Here are some considerations to remember when working with a deaf or hearing impaired student. The inability to hear does not affect an individual's native intelligence or the physical ability to produce sounds. Some deaf students are skilled lip readers, but many are not. Many speech sounds have identical mouth movements, which can make lip reading particularly difficult. For example, P, B, and M look exactly alike on the lips, and many sounds, vowels for example, are produced without using clearly differentiated lip movements. Make sure you have a deaf student's attention before speaking. A light touch on the shoulder, a wave, or other visual signal will help. Look directly at a person with a hearing impairment during a conversation, even when an interpreter is present. Speak clearly without shouting. If you have problems being understood, rephrase your thoughts. Writing is also a good way to clarify. Make sure your face is clearly visible. Keep your hands away from your face and mouth while speaking. Sitting with your back to a window, gum chewing, cigarette smoking, pencil biting, and similar obstructions of the lips can also interfere with the effectiveness of communication. Common accommodations for deaf or hard of hearing students include sign language interpreters, steno captioners, assistive listening devices, TDT relay services, volume control telephones, signaling devices, i.e., a flashing light to alert individuals to a door knock or reading telephone, priority registration, early syllabus, note takers, and captions for films and videos. Here are some instructional strategies that can be implemented when working with a deaf or hard of hearing students. Circular seating arrangements offer deaf or hard of hearing students the advantage of seeing all class participants, especially in a seminar setting. For the lecture setting, keep front seats open for students who are deaf or hard of hearing and their interpreters. Repeat the comments and questions of other students, especially those from the back rows. Acknowledge who has made the comment so the deaf or hard of hearing student can focus on the speaker. When appropriate, ask for a hearing volunteer to team up with a deaf or hard of hearing student for in-class assignments. On request from the student, assist with finding an effective note taker or lab assistant from the class. If possible, provide transcripts of audio information. Face the class while speaking. If an interpreter is present, make sure the student can see both you and the interpreter. Because visual information is a deaf student's primary means of receiving information, films, overheads, diagrams, and other visual aids are useful instructional tools. Spoken dialogue and commentary in films, videotapes, DVDs, and online course websites should either be presented in captions or other alternate means of a transcript. Be flexible. Allow a deaf student to work with audiovisual material independently and for a longer period of time. When in doubt about how to assist a student, ask him or her. Allow the same student the same anonymity as other students. Avoid pointing out the student or alternate arrangements to the rest of the class. These are some instructional strategies for students with emotional and behavioral disorders. Requirements for intervention in IDEA. IDEA requires that the school professionals use very systematic procedures to document the behavior problems that students display, to analyze the reasons that those behaviors occur, and to develop and systematically implement that interventions intended to reduce inappropriate behaviors and increase appropriate behaviors. 2 specific procedures are required for all students with disabilities, regardless of whether their identified disability involves emotional disturbance. These 2 structures are FBA, Functional Behavior Assessment. Identify the problem behavior. Carefully describe the behaviors in observable ways and prioritize them. Describe in detail the settings in which the behavior occurs. Gather information about the behavior using interviews, rating scales, observations, review of the student's records, and other techniques. Review the data. Form a hypothesis about the function of the behavior based on the data gathered. Behavior intervention plan. This is a set of strategies designed to address the function of the behavior in order to change it. Data is gathered to assess whether the given strategies are effective. Examples include contracts, partners with peers, or other instructional strategies. Here are some other instructional strategies to work with emotional and behavioral disabilities. Keep the lesson objectives clear. Deliver lessons in a lively manner and make sure that students are engaged. Use concrete vocabulary and clear, succinct sentences. Give immediate encouragement and specific feedback. Allow students to make choices. And peer-mediated instruction.
Students who have severe or multiple disabilities experience difficulty generalizing information or skills learned through different settings, tasks, material, and people. Teaching approaches that address these needs are teaching a specific skill in a direct and systematic way by breaking it into smaller steps as part of meaningful activities. Provide assistance to students using words, demonstrations, and even physical guiding, such as placing a hand under the student's hand immediately, reward correct responses right afterwards. Teach within the natural context and teach across as many settings, tasks, and people as possible so that the students can use what they learn in any appropriate situation. Pictures are usually helpful to use in communication and teaching a new skill. The pictures can communicate interest, knowledge, preferences, joy, frustration, agreement, or disagreement. Take this picture of the windsor now, for example. It is direct and systematic. It is clear, uses pictures on a step-by-step process as well as uses words in the description. Students with speech and language disorders, regardless of whether they have other disabilities as well, can learn new skills and practice emerging skills with the assistance of computer technology. One use of technology is to use communication boards. The boards use pictures, symbols, and printed words. This is an example of what a communication board can look like. Instructional interventions should be designed to provide structure, quick pace, and variety. When giving directions, be sure the instructions follow the 3 C's: clear, concise, and complete. For example, after introducing an activity, say, take out 1 sheet of paper, put on the heading, write 3 sentences to describe the main character's feelings. Avoid saying things that are vague and incomplete. When giving directions, have students repeat it back to you. This way, students will be more likely to remember them. Another instructional intervention could be breaking an assignment into several short tasks when students have a lengthy or complex assignment. There are many instructional strategies that could be effective with students that have autism. Priming helps students to become familiar with academic material prior to its use in school. Priming is most effective when it is built in a student's routine. It should be in a relaxed environment. Discrete trial training has 5 parts to it: antecedent, prompt, response, consequence for correct or incorrect response, intertrial interval. Discrete trial training requires a lot of time and is mostly implemented with preschool children. Prompting is a cue designed to get a student to perform a certain behavior. An example of prompting would be pointing to the top of the paper where the learner needs to write his name. A visual prompt could be where a teacher provides pictures of events that provide learners with information about how to use the target skill or behavior. For example, checklist, transition picture card, and task analysis.